if you missed out on our Kickstarter to help fund my first feature-length documentary, In Search of the Last Action Heroes, don't worry, all our fantastic and exclusive rewards are now available on Indiegogo in demand. You can find a link below. Just recently, Supergirl arrived on Blu-ray thanks to Warner Archive. The 1984 guilty pleasure came to DVD very early on in the format's life, around the year 2000. It came out as a special edition released by Anchor Bay, limited to 50,000 copies. It included the international cut, which wasn't available in the USA, and it was the first time fans got to see the director's cut, as it had never been seen before, as it had been buried away in an archive for years. Warner Bros. Later re-released the DVD during the time when Superman Returns hit home video, but since then it's been out of print. Now there are currently 3 different cuts available on Supergirl, with now the most common version being the international cut, that played in Europe and Asia, which runs at 2 hours and 4 minutes. The TriStar Pictures cut that was shortened for US audiences runs at 1 hour and 45 minutes. This version also played on TV a lot in the UK. And finally the director's cut, which comes in at 2 hours and 18 minutes. Now I'm surprised Warner Bros. Left it quite late for a Blu-ray release, as Supergirl has been very popular on TV and coming up to its 4th season. Many fans thought it would turn up in HD when the TV series aired. It would have made a good tie-in, and Helen Slater has a role in the new show. But I suppose with it being the 80th anniversary of Superman's birthday and the 40th anniversary of Superman the movie, releasing it now may have made more sense to them. Supergirl the movie was something I grew up on, and it's certainly an important film of my childhood, but I'm fully aware of its major faults. Objectively, it's not a good movie. Its story is a mess, it's full of plot holes and a tad incoherent. It bombed on release and was panned by critics for those obvious problems, and the additional scenes that were cut out for the US version didn't help. As a kid, I didn't let its clumsy story get in the way of it entertaining me. On a technical level, the film is very impressive. Its visual effects are handled by the same team of the Christopher Reeve series, and the producers, the Solkinds, certainly don't cut corners on the budget. They threw tons of money at it, totaling around $35 million, but ultimately it was spent on a terrible script by David Odell, who had previously written The Dark Crystal and went on to write Masters of the Universe. Supergirl is certainly the weakest of his scripts. But I do think he was screwed once Chris Reeve bowed out. He was originally intended to appear in the movie to welcome Kara to Earth, and throughout the story Superman gets weakened and Supergirl has to save him. But Chris got cold feet, so the production had to quickly rewrite the script to remove any Superman connection. The script resulted in making passing comments on how he left Earth to go on an intergalactic mission, and we get to see the awesome poster of him in Lucy Lane's bedroom. The only connection they have to the Superman series is Jimmy Olsen, who is thrown in to be a love interest for Lucy Lane. Now, having the opportunity to see the film in high definition was a breath of fresh air. Being stuck watching the old crappy DVD for years, this is a major improvement. Alan Hume's cinematography really pops with lush colours, and the great front projection flying scenes handled by Derek Meddings look glorious. With Supergirl, they were experimenting with different angles to really sell the flying scenes. They push the front projection as much as possible and only resort to blue screen for the more complicated shots, and the in-camera wire work is superb. The print is in fantastic condition, with no visible scratches and a good level of grain. There is loads of extra detail I hadn't noticed before when watching it on DVD, thanks to the improved clarity. I was far too young when this came out in cinemas, and I've never seen it play again in any cinema as part of some retro revival, so seeing it in high definition is as close as I'm going to get to see it in 35mm. The transfer appears to have been colour timed correctly, because the wires are barely visible. The old Anchor Bay release did have issues with its overall brightness and contrast, making the wires appear on screen. It was odd, as the international cut on DVD had wires visible in places where the director's cut had a slightly different look, and the wires weren't there. So it was a careful balance when transferring these movies from film to digital, and getting the transfer right so it matches how the filmmakers intended. They exposed the film and lit it in such a way to hide the support cables. If the brightness and contrast is off, it reveals everything. The DTS Master Audio sound mix is identical to the previous releases, but has less compression applied, so it's a lot fuller and louder on playback. But sadly, it exhibits the same problem with the score, as it's mixed incorrectly for the final battle. When Supergirl returns from the Phantom Zone and smashes through the window acting as a portal, the music cue ends too early. It sounds like an abrupt edit. The audio, however, is correct on the director's cut. One of the highlights of the film is Jerry Goldsmith's score, which is full of character, great themes and action cues. Jerry was one of the best composers around and was originally going to work on Superman, as he had worked with Richard Donner on The Omen, but he became unavailable and John Williams took over and provided the best superhero score ever written. The score to Supergirl doesn't quite make the same impact as Superman, but that doesn't stop it from being a great listen and works flawlessly with the film. I think the Blu-ray is certainly worth upgrading from the DVD. Seeing it in HD is worth the price, but it doesn't come with anything new, as Warner Archive appear to have a limited budget for their releases and is operating as a specialist label. It brings over the vintage making of and commentary track from the previous releases, and the director's cut is only presented in standard definition. Warner's tried to source the print but had no luck finding it, so they had to make do with the old transfer, which is a bit of a shame. The director's cut is not a major improvement over the international cut. It doesn't bring across any new action scenes or moments of Supergirl doing something heroic. It's just extra lines of dialogue here and there to help some of the plot issues, but it's clear these moments were trimmed for good reason to help the pace. There are some nice additional shots of Zoltar's home in the Phantom Zone, but overall it doesn't improve the movie and just makes it too long. It's a nice addition, however, for fans of the film. Supergirl is pure camp and can be enjoyed for those reasons. You could say it's so bad it's good. It does have a jarring tone as it takes itself a tad too seriously in places, but also plays it for laughs, making it uneven. It lacks the verisimilitude of Donner's Superman. It's got the great visual effects, and Helen Slater at such a young age has to hold the film together, and there's a lot of pressure on her shoulders, and thankfully she delivers a great performance, but overall the film is very goofy and silly in places. The plot feels like it's written for a TV show and seems small in its ideas, and it only does something interesting when Supergirl is sent to the Phantom Zone. It doesn't feel epic and big, and it lacks a true vision. It's got the money, but it's being spent on an unimaginative script. With it dealing with witchcraft and the supernatural, it deals with a subject that the Christopher Reeve series never touched upon. I just don't think the supernatural and the mix of demons works with the Superman/Supergirl universe. But saying that, I was freaked out as a kid when Peter Cook, who is an amazing comedian and wasted in this movie, shows Selina the demon's reflection in his cigarette case, and when it fully forms at the end, it's the stuff of nightmares. It felt like Supergirl was steering towards more of the fantasy genre, making me think of the movie KRULL and its use of a demon-like monster that captures the princess. Supergirl was the first superhero movie to focus on a female lead. People often forget that when bringing up the discussion in more recent debates, especially with the success of Wonder Woman. I think due to Supergirl back in 1984 struggling to find an audience, it was kind of swept under the rug, and it's certainly not an important movie for Warner Brothers. You can't blame them, it was never a movie they actually solely distributed back in the day, as it was released by other studios, and it's only in more recent years they picked up the rights for full ownership. With the release of the 3-hour TV cut of Superman proving very popular on Blu-ray recently, hopefully Supergirl will do well and encourage Warner Archive to continue with more Superman Blu-rays. All we need now is the extended TV cut of Superman 2 and the full cut of Superman 4. A couple of years ago it was revealed the director of Superman 4, Sidney J. Furie, delivered a full and complete cut to Warner Brothers before it was heavily trimmed down for release in 1987, so it's somewhere hidden away in Warner's archives. It's a shame the script for Supergirl was such a mess. I think it would have really helped if Christopher Reeve was in it. It would have helped with the advertising and brought in more of an audience at the time, and it would have given the character of Supergirl more to do and more dialogue. Supergirl spends a lot of time by herself not saying much, so it would have benefited the story for her to have this interaction with Superman. It could have successfully kickstarted a new series for the character, but alas it failed, and in the comics Supergirl was killed off a year later. So it sadly seems the character had run out of steam at that point. But nonetheless it was fun watching the film again, and it was a nice trip down memory lane that made me smile and laugh at its silly moments. Helen Slater is a joy to watch as she treats the character very seriously and with respect, and the score and visual effects still wowed me, which is pretty good for a film that is over 30 years old.